Welcome back to the deep dive. So, we all know the struggle, right? You have this great intention, maybe a new habit you really, really want to get going in your life.
Mm-hmm.
But then, day 3 hits, maybe 4, motivation's kind of gone, and you just forget.
Yeah, or life just gets in the way.
Exactly. And I think the common thread in most of those failures is just relying purely on, well, willpower.
Totally. And our mission today is really to cut through that dependence. We're pulling a specific blueprint from the source material here, what seems to be the absolute best strategy for reliably actually starting a new behavior.
Okay.
It's a method that kind of bypasses that, let's say, unreliable internal engine, willpower, and gives you a solid external trigger instead.
Right. So we're diving into the mechanics of mastering that starting line. And the core strategy you're saying is called habit stacking.
That's the one. Habit stacking.
Okay, so it takes these vague ideas, I want to be healthier, I want to read more, and makes them specific actions tied to time and place. But just for everyone listening, what's the simple formula they need to get right now?
It is surprisingly simple. Habit stacking comes from this psychological idea called implementation intentions. Fancy name, but it's basically just deciding in advance when and where you'll do something specific.
Okay.
So the structure, the formula for you, the listener, is this. After current habit, I will new habit.
After current habit, I will new habit. That's, almost deceptively simple.
It is.
So we're taking something we want to do, read more, meditate, whatever, and just hooking it directly onto something we already do every day without even thinking about it.
Precisely. That's the core.
Okay, so let's get into the why this works. You mentioned implementation intentions. How does tying it to an existing habit build that momentum?
Right. So to really understand the power here, we need to look at the psychology a bit. We're not just like scheduling a task on a calendar. We're using an existing, already ingrained habit as a cue.
A cue, okay.
Yeah. And the research shows that when you define your intention, this specifically linking the new action to that existing cue, you make the follow-up behavior much more automatic, almost non-conscious.
So if I always make coffee every single morning, like clockwork, that action itself, making the coffee, becomes the trigger for, say, writing one sentence in a journal.
Exactly right. The
Yeah.
whole goal is to bypass the need for conscious decision-making at that moment. Thinking takes effort, right?
Right.
So if you just rely on, oh, I should remember to journal sometime today, well, you're leaving the door wide open for forgetting or just putting it off.
That happens all the time.
But when the journaling is immediately triggered right after the automatic act of brewing that coffee, your sort of non-conscious mind takes over and just carries that new habit forward much more easily.
Okay, that makes sense. But I guess, how is this different from just, setting a reminder on my phone? Like, buzz at 8 a.m. or write in journal.
That's a good question. The difference really lies in the anchor. A calendar reminder, well, it's kind of disconnected from your physical environment, right? From your actual flow. It often just interrupts you.
True.
Habit stacking uses a cue that's already part of your daily rhythm, like the smell of the coffee, the feel of the toothbrush, putting your keys down when you get home. These anchors are physical, they're environmental. They make the shift to the new behavior feel seamless, not jarring. You're basically creating flow, not adding another interruption.
Okay, that continuity, that flow, that's where the momentum comes from.
Exactly.
And this momentum idea connects to something the source material called a positive Diderot effect. I think the backstory here is pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah, it's a great analogy for understanding these chains of behavior. So the Diderot effect, it's named after this French philosopher, Denis Diderot. Apparently, he was pretty poor for most of his life until suddenly he got this big chunk of money.
Okay.
And to celebrate, he bought himself this magnificent new scarlet dressing gown, like really fancy.
Nice robe. But that's where the trouble started, yeah.
Pretty much, because this beautiful, opulent robe immediately made everything else he owned, his old desk, his worn-out rug, his plain chairs look really shabby and, like, out of place in comparison.
Okay. I see where this is going.
Right. So this one lovely item created this cascading need to upgrade everything else just to match the quality of the robe. He ended up spiraling into buying stuff he couldn't really afford just to keep up with the aesthetic standard the robe had set.
Wow. Okay, so one nice thing unintentionally creates this pressure, this friction that drives you to get more things. That's the negative Diderot effect driving consumption.
Exactly. But with habit stacking, we're deliberately flipping that. We're turning that friction into positive momentum. We use the established positive habit, the anchor, like it's the scarlet robe, sets the standard.
Sure.
And it creates this chain reaction where one good action just naturally pulls you into the next one. You get a bit of a cognitive break, too, because you don't have to actively decide, what should I do next?
Right.
The stack, the flow, dictates the next action. You're essentially capitalizing on that natural human tendency we have towards, completion.
Okay, let's make this really concrete for people.
Mm.
Can we give some specific examples they could literally, start using today?
Mm-hmm.
The formula works for all sorts of things, right?
Yeah.
Health, relationships.
Absolutely. The versatility is huge.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, maybe you want to cultivate more gratitude. A good stack could be, after I sit down to dinner, I will say one thing I'm grateful for that happened today.
Okay, after I sit down to dinner.
Mm.
Why is sitting down maybe a better anchor than, say, before I start eating or when I finish?
Good point. It's about the cue being really distinct and reliable. The physical action of sitting down is a very clear moment that happens reliably right before you start eating, which is something you're looking forward to.
Right.
If you try to stack it after you finish eating, well, you might already be distracted, thinking about clearing the table or reaching for your phone or whatever. You want that cue to be almost inescapable.
That's a really good nuance. Okay. What about for improving relationships? Something simple.
Yeah, maybe something like, after I get into bed at night, I will ask my partner about their high point and low point of the day. It builds connection right there in a moment that's usually low friction anyway.
Simple, but powerful. And the source material also mentions safety, which is critical.
Yes, like this one. After I put on my running shoes, I will text a friend or family member where I am running and roughly how long it will take.
Okay, so tying the laces becomes the physical anchor for that safety check.
Precisely.
Now, beyond these very specific, time-based stacks, the source material also talks about creating sort of general game plans, not tied to a time, but more to a context.
Correct. These are more like general habit stacks, creating simple rules that guide your behavior whenever you encounter a specific situation or cue in your environment. Think of it as pre-programming a response.
Okay, like what?
Well, for exercise, a classic one is, when I see a set of stairs, I will take them instead of using the elevator. The stairs themselves are the cue. The action becomes almost non-negotiable in your mind.
Right, it just removes the debate. You see stairs, rule kicks in, decision made. What about something harder, like financial discipline, impulse buys?
Yeah, a really powerful stack for finances involves putting in a deliberate delay. Like, when I want to buy something over, say, $100, I will wait 24 hours before actually purchasing it.
Oh, I like that.
The cue is that impulse, right? The desire to hit checkout. The stacked action is the enforced pause. You're injecting friction right before a potentially negative outcome.
That's brilliant. It forces that gap between the impulse and actually doing it. Okay, so this all sounds great, but we absolutely have to talk about the most common mistake, right? Choosing the wrong anchor.
This is so vital. The rule of frequency here is basically non-negotiable. The existing cue, your anchor habit, must happen with the same frequency as the new habit you want to build.
Okay, so if I want to start a daily habit, like 5 minutes of stretching, I absolutely cannot stack it onto a habit I only do, say, 3 times a week.
Yeah.
Maybe watering the plants.
Exactly. That stack is doomed to fail most days of the week. It guarantees inconsistency right from the start.
Right.
If you want to stretch daily, your anchor has to be daily too. You need to brainstorm. What are the things you already do every single day without fail? Brushing your teeth, pouring your first coffee or glass of water, maybe sitting down for your first work call, taking the dog out.
Things you'd feel weird not doing.
Exactly. The anchor needs to be something so ingrained you'd almost forget how to function without it. If you stack a short, easy new habit onto one of those bulletproof existing habits, your success rate just skyrockets.
So when we connect this all back to the bigger picture, habit stacking isn't just about adding one single new thing. It feels more like maybe a systemic way to manage your day, your energy.
I think that's a good way to put it. It allows you to create, as the source material says, a set of simple rules that guide your future behavior. Just think about how many tiny decisions we make every single day. It's exhausting, right? Decision fatigue is real.
Totally.
Habit stacking helps offload a lot of those decisions. You no longer have to waste precious cognitive energy choosing the next right thing to do. The stack decides for you.
Right. By chaining these small positive habits together, the momentum builds and you become less reliant on that very limited resource we call willpower.
Yeah.
Simple rules just set a positive path for the whole day.
That's it. If you successfully stack, say, after I drink my morning coffee, I will plan my top 3 tasks for the day, and that becomes automatic.
Yeah.
Well, the next few hours of your day are inherently more focused and productive simply because that initial action was automated. And the cumulative effect of these small, automated, positive actions, it's profound over months and years. Small habits really do compound into pretty large outcomes eventually.
And it's such a sharp contrast to vague goals, isn't it? Instead of just saying, I want to be healthier this year, which means almost nothing in practice,
Right.
you're implementing a predictable system. After I finish dinner, I will immediately put on my walking shoes. Actionable. Specific.
Yeah, it shifts your whole mindset. You stop being someone who just wishes they were healthier, and you become someone who has an actual, actionable game plan every time that specific cue finishing dinner presents itself. You're basically designing your routine, maybe even your environment, so that doing the right thing becomes the path of least resistance. You set the course, and the current of your automatic behavior just follows those guide rails you built.
Okay, so if you take away just one core thing today, remember that formula. After current habit, I will new habit. It really seems like the most robust, reliable tool we have for actually weaving new behaviors into our lives by linking them to things we already do automatically.
It really is the blueprint for engineering almost effortless improvement.
Hmm.
And maybe, just before we wrap up this deep dive, we can consider a really powerful inversion of this whole strategy.
Go.
So far, we focused on linking a positive new action to a neutral or maybe positive existing anchor habit. But what about those undesirable habits? The energy sinks, the things you find yourself defaulting to, like maybe instantly checking social media the second you feel bored or pick up your phone.
Yes. The bad habit that always seems to derail focus or waste time. But we're not trying to just resist it with willpower, are we? Because we already said that's tough.
Exactly. Resisting takes energy. Willpower is finite. We know the drill. Instead,
Yeah.
what if you applied habit stacking principles to make that negative habit the necessary cue for something positive?
Huh. So you let the bad habit happen, but you immediately use its momentum to pivot, like an inverse stack. Maybe. After I open Instagram, I must write one sentence for my book. Something like that.
That is the ultimate repurposing of momentum. You're not fighting the urge to scroll, you're acknowledging it, letting it happen maybe, but immediately mandating that a positive action has to follow right on its heels.
Wow.
It doesn't require resistance in the same way. It actually leverages the completion of the negative habit to immediately trigger and fulfill a positive obligation you've set for yourself. You've designed a system where even the momentum of a bad habit can kick off a good one.
You've basically built the blueprint. Now you just need to actually start stacking those habits.
Exactly. It's time to start making those commitments really specific, really simple, and ultimately automatic.
That's it for this deep dive. We really hope this system helps you install those crucial new habits, maybe starting today.